Hey guys, I'm Corey Kaplan, one of the two co-founders here at Dolomite, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about what we're building and how it's going to impact the Mantle ecosystem. First, starting on a bit of a team background, and my co-founder and we first got started in the industry pretty early on. For myself in 2015, I was building some game modding and exploitation software when a company whose game I was modding shut me down on PayPal. Then I started taking Bitcoin for payment as a way to get around those sort of payment issues. That got me pretty involved in the industry so that by 2017, became pretty familiar with the rise of Ethereum, smart contracts, and the different kind of dApps that were being built on top of there. At the time, people were still calling early DeFi open finance, and space didn't really know exactly what it was yet or what the implications of it would be. But it was a really exciting time to be building. And we're also really fortunate to have been working with some early on DeFi protocols like Loopring and others, contributing to their open source protocols and using that as a means to earn our stripes, so to speak, in the early DeFi days. Put into context how early on some of this was, DeFi on a good day was doing $5 to $10 million in total DEX trading volume per day. We're talking really low numbers and low levels of adoption where people didn't really know exactly what DeFi was, nor how big it could be and what the possibilities were. So, starting out early in DeFi played a big part in our journey and our learning process that you'll see more about what we took away from our early steps in DeFi and how it impacted the current state of Dolomite. So Dolomite today is a prime brokerage built for DeFi. We work really closely with users and integrations in order to offer the best experience possible for lending and borrowing, margin trading, and rolling out different strategies. We're really excited by the idea of Dolomite existing as a DeFi hub, which enables all these different integrations to live in one place so that you can discover different opportunities and run very unique strategies together with all these different assets and different possibilities in the platform in order to maximize your yield earning potential, as well as whatever your opinion might be on the state of the market and the direction it may or may not be going in. What makes Dolomite unique, and I think an important takeaway from all these different things that we're going to be talking about shortly, is our participation in DeFi and watching it evolve. When the current market leaders like Aave and Compound were first created, which were of course built by very smart teams, this was before DeFi was or is what it is today. Predominantly Aave V2 and V3 were built before we have things like yield farming and points and governance rights and staking and claiming and all these really cool DeFi activities that makes our ecosystem so unique. And so we wanted to allow users to retain all the cool rights and capabilities that come along with their assets, enabling things like dynamic collateral, where you can still use your assets on our platform for lending and borrowing, but also tap into any native DeFi capabilities. That's the first aspect here with broad token support. The fact that you can use really diverse sets of tokens on our platform and in ways that you aren't able to do so on other platforms. And then taking that a step further, what you might notice with other lending protocols is that they typically cap out between 32 and 64 assets or so. If you're looking at a central pool design, if you're looking at more isolated markets, they're able to list a lot more, but then there's tons of liquidity fragmentation. And one of the really important design principles that we brought with Dolomite is the ability to list hundreds, if not even thousands of assets in the same central pooled architecture to enable as much capital efficiency as possible. And this paves the way for users to use their assets more productively than they potentially can anywhere else. Just to draw some of the comparison here between Dolomite and other platforms, just looking at our Arbitrum deployment in particular, just because it is the most mature deployment amongst our different L2 deployments, we've currently listed about 58 different assets in total, and there's no sign of us slowing down. The most important thing with listing all these assets is that we're able to integrate really deeply with different DeFi ecosystems. So any one ecosystem could potentially have dozens and dozens of assets. Looking at the Pendle ecosystem, every few months they spit out a new PT asset for the same token, or the same underlying yield-bearing token rather. platforms like Uniswap V2, of course, that have tons and tons of LP pools all represented as tokens. And so we think that as much as the future is tokenized with all these different yield-bearing strategies and different ways to represent equity in the DeFi world being represented through tokens, makes Dolomite in a really strong spot to be able to work with all of these different assets then. And one of the most notable things I mentioned earlier or alluded to is this concept of retaining your DeFi native rights. So if you have an asset that you can claim rewards, compound rewards, stake, vote, vest, earn points, or other things, you're able to continue doing those things on Dolomite. And we're able to do this on a really deep level so that our dApp becomes an extension of whatever dApp that you're used to using. So one of our best examples, once again, in the Arbitrum ecosystem is the GMX token. You're able to continue claiming and compounding your rewards, vesting, staking, and even doing full account transfers into our platform. To broaden the analogy then to what we're able to do in the Mantle ecosystem, we're soon going to be releasing a staked Mantle token that will allow you to stake your MNT tokens or lock them up, to use the more colloquial language, will allow you to lock them up in the Mantle Award Station for a 1x boost, which would mean it's a flexible unlock. And you're able to continue borrowing against your stack at the same time. This opens up really exciting possibilities for users to still participate in the Mantle Reward Station and actively borrow against their stack and potentially yield farm elsewhere. You can get access to leverage rewards or looped rewards by borrowing USDC and looping it into more MNT tokens in order to stake it there, or other really cool possibilities as well, like delta neutral MNT and staked MNT borrowing against each other. Ultimately, all these different examples here are meant to be just that, examples of different possibilities that users can do with our platform. And this opens up an entirely new dimension for users to take advantage of that you otherwise can't find on any other platform. And it's something that we're really proud of. All right, well, moving on then. So the really nice thing with Dolomite being able to list and work with tons of different assets are the different capabilities that come along with that. You know, on a more simple scope, you're able to margin trade any of the listed assets against any other asset, provided that you don't break any of the risk management rules. This opens up really cool things like pair trading or different financial strategies that you can use to express your view on the market that otherwise aren't available. You know, we've seen plenty of instances where, you know, for example, ETH is being utilized considerably, and therefore the interest rates for it are really high to borrow it. And so what people or users started doing instead is borrowing other assets instead, like wrap staked ETH or RETH or METH on Mantle, of course. And this opens up really interesting capabilities because you're able to tap into plenty of different tokens, borrowing them against each other in order to either yield farm some strategy, express where you think the price might be going, etc. And this allows for a lot of flexibility then with how you can tap into our platform. We like to think about it as, I kind of mentioned this earlier, as like a DeFi hub, but each asset that gets listed has like a bit of a synergetic effect where it opens up the network effects of our platform considerably. So every asset opens up potentially another way to borrow against any other asset that's already on there. So it's a really exciting capability for us to continue growing. And certainly as our Mantle deployment continues to accrue more and more assets and more depositors come in to use the platform, more capabilities that are unlocked for it. So just to name some other strategies that are possible with this sort of paradigm, there's of course hedging capabilities where you're able to deposit things like LP tokens on and then potentially hedge out the delta for it in order to capture their yield and do so really efficiently. There's different delta neutral yield opportunities as well. A good example of this is like the Pendle PT token that we have listed, USDE, and being able to borrow other stable coins against it, so long as the the borrow interest rate is lower than the supply rate, you're able to actually loop that up to earn amplified yield. And potentially new financial instruments as well, as we're able to list more assets to be used as collateral and potentially borrowable as well, as we integrate deeper and deeper into other protocols that exist on the network. But moving on then to Dolomite's architecture and how we're set up from a smart contract level, we look at Dolomite as an extremely composable platform and one of the first modular lending protocols. Modularity is key in how we designed Dolomite to maintain the utmost security and ethos and guarantees that DeFi has to offer. So when you think about like how other protocols might be architected and how it might impact their decision making, we've seen this before where protocols like Euler, unfortunately, were able to upgrade a core contract that was able to violate one of the core invariants, and that led to a massive exploit of over 9 figures. So what we wanted to do with Dolomite from its design principles is make sure that the core level is immutable. And so this means that there's a lot of different primitives that are enabled through the core level, but we can't change them. So our upgrade path of how we roll out new features and things over time is actually situating new modules on top of that core level then. Very similar to what you see with the image on the right-hand side of this current slide, where things kind of stack on top of each other. And these modules and integrations don't necessarily just have to be things that Dolomite rolls out. It could be things that other protocols and other teams decide to build as well. And a good example of this is our Pendle integration and Contango integrations. Contango built a full trading platform on top of Dolomite listed assets, and it works adjacent to all the other lending protocols that Contango has integrated. And we're seeing plenty of open interest and trading activity flow through Dolomite through that integration, which is really exciting. Then with Pendle built a fixed interest yield market for our USDC depositors on Arbitrum. This meant that you have access to PTDUSDC as a means to get fixed interest on your USDC deposits on Dolomite there. And so surely as a protocol matures and potentially there's more network effects that open up, we're anticipating more DeFi builders to build cool things on top of Dolomite. And like I mentioned, the neat thing with it is everything is built on top of our core base layer, which can't be changed. It's completely immutable. And it could situate themselves in different places of our tech stack in order to offer really cool features then to users while maintaining the same security principles that's led to our successes so far with making sure that the protocol stays safe. So in terms of Dolomite's backers and who we are, where we are today, Dolomite's very fortunate to have raised from some very prominent VCs and angels that have been really helpful in growing us to where we are right now. Most notably, this slide here really focuses on the people that participated in our seed round, as well as some of the core integrations that have been done with different protocols on the Arbitrum community. The parts of this are a bit out of date because, of course, there's some exciting things happening on Mantle. And then aside from that, we also raised a strategic round in March of this year that included some prominent angel investors and KOLs that will be able to help further spread the word of the project as we mature further and further. So Dolomite itself, of course, we mentioned it's live. Been live since October 13th of 2022. Our TVL has continued to grow. We're continuing to see more total value borrowed as well, which is a good sign for product market fit. And we've really tried to focus on not, as I mentioned at the start of this, not really focusing on hype-driven stuff to make sure that the fundamentals are intact for the project before we really kick it into overdrive, so to speak. And so what that means is that we've accrued less than 1 penny of bad debt and have suffered from no security exploits since launch. We've also done over 50 plus asset integrations, and this is part of the reason why Dolomite's TVL has continued to grow so much, are the unique assets and features that we're able to offer on our platform that you can't necessarily find elsewhere. And a good way to, quantify this would be the last point, which is that interest rates on Dolomite typically are higher than what you see on other platforms. So that would mean that you can earn more than what you might be able to get on Aave at the expense of potentially borrowing at a higher rate. And the reason for that is because of the unique assets and features that Dolomite has to offer. Typically, it has led to people being a little less price sensitive to the interest rates that they're paying for these different strategies that they run then. So at this point, I wanted to hand it over to Adam to talk about some of the more unique community initiatives that we've taken that have really helped with driving engagement and keeping our community happy.
Sure. So yeah, this is one we've been running for maybe over a year at this point. It's Dolomite's Community XP program. The way it works, it's a lot like XP, experience points in a video game. You collect them by showing up to events like these, hitting milestones in usage of Dolomite, trying out new integrations, new features, and as you collect them, you get more levels. Levels get you things like accelerated vesting on some of our rewards. They get you exclusive roles in our Discord, a bit of flair to show off your clout, some access to exclusive groups, and who knows what more in the future. We'd like to keep building on it. On that topic though, we've mentioned in our recent tweets, we'd love to get you guys started with some XP if you haven't started collecting it already. Unfortunately, Galaxy is not really playing ball right now. Their data is not really loading, but we're going to be putting out a link where you can go claim it after the event. You'll have 24 hours to grab it, and you'll be able to get it using the passcode COOK, C-O-O-K. And you can use that to start building up some XP. But on top of that, we've got a couple extra campaigns as well that are coming out, because so far all of them have really been Arbitrum focused based on some of the assets and integrations we've done there. But we definitely want to start bringing some focus over to Mantle. So we're doing 2 new campaigns using Mantle assets. One of them's METH. I can't recall what the other one is, but I guess that'll be a nice little surprise. Those are coming out real soon, so you could start building up some XP from some of your activity on Mantle. I'm going to pop it over to the next slide, Corey. So Minerals is another program we run, and this one is really just focused on the key assets that power strategies on Dolomite. Essentially, a lot of the strategies people run, they're supplying some very high yield assets, and they're borrowing things like USDT, USDC, ETH, and we just wanted to give some recognition to people who are supplying those key assets. So this is a way to build up a ton of extra XP, compete on the leaderboard, and we've got the longer you maintain your balance of these assets, the more you build up your multiplier. And special thing we've been running with Mantle is a double multiplier bonus. So instead of 2x, you get 4x. Instead of 5x, you get 10x. Just a nice way to build up some extra minerals. In terms of what's next, I'll talk about a couple of these, and Corey, if you wanted to talk about some as well. One that's coming up real soon is our strategies page. Right now, using Dolomite, we'll see it during the demo. It's very custom. It gives you a lot of control, but that could also mean if you're not as familiar with lending and borrowing on these kind of protocols, it may be a little bit much to take in. But with the strategies page, we'll give you the pre-built strategies. All you need to do is enter how much you'd like to use in the strategy. It lays out the risks, the benefits, what it's going to be doing, and lets you track it and manage it all in one place. Very nice and easy. So that's going to make it way easier to get started with some of the cool strategies people are running on Dolomite. The other one is the trade page is getting a big revamp using our Zap feature, which I'll let Corey talk about a little bit later during the demo. But essentially, it'll mean easy margin trading using any of our assets, easy to get leverage with it to either try and maximize your yield or just get some price exposure, give you all the DEX tools you'd want with a huge wide range of assets, and real easy interface for it. So that's another one to look forward to. But I'll toss it back to you, Corey, if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me also? Am I muted?
Coming in loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. The other thing worth mentioning with Dolomite is looking to, of course, grow the number of assets we have listed and providing more utility for them. I mentioned earlier the ability to stake your MNT on the platform to continue to earn rewards from the reward station while actively borrowing against them. And then the other important thing is just utility. And we're looking to drive as much unique features into Dolomite and transform it into more of a prime brokerage over time. That last bullet point of being able to offer things like stop loss, take profit, and more is a really important feature for us to roll out, because it's not just going to be useful on things like the trade page, but also on the borrow page. And just to give you an analogy of what we envision this kind of looking like is if you have a position open on Aave right now that want to close out if ETH pumps up to 5,000, or if you want to start selling off collateral or paying off debt, as the price dips, you can't do that without either using a third-party integration like something like DeFi Saver, but even then it's a bit limited, or you have to be in front of your computer when that happens, or on your mobile device if your wallet is on there. There's no automated solution for handling those sorts of things. And so we really want to transform Dolomite to turn it into more of an automated platform for handling these things if you want to be able to set these sorts of things up. And we think that that's a really important feature to be able to break Dolomite out of its existing mold from lending market to more prime brokerage like over time. It's really important for users to be able to just have that exercisable control over their positions. And the nice thing as well is just the way that we like to design our features. We like to maximize the potential for reuse as much as possible. And so as we roll out these sorts of features, it'll also be able to carry over potentially into things like the strategies page, where you're able to set up automated strategies and use these tools in order to rebalance these strategies as they see fit. So it'll allow us to offer probably more unique strategies over time, not just simple ones where you're looping up for powder exposure, but potentially something much more over time as well. So I'll keep that a bit more open-ended, but a really exciting thing that we're working towards, and the key thing that you could probably take away from these different things that we're looking at next is that they're very utility driven. We're constantly looking at ways and taking in feedback for how we can make the platform better for users to take advantage of.
I think that's all for the deck, but
Yeah,
wanted to get set up with the demo. I've been screenshotting a few questions I can answer in the meantime that I think are some quick ones. Sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
I'm also going to post the links, all the Dolomite links here too, and I'd encourage everybody to follow along as well as while we're going through the demo. Sorry, just give me 1 second here. I'm going to post these from my other account. Yeah, encourage everybody to follow along. It's a great way to learn. And also, if you run into any issues here, you can always ask the team. That's part of why we're here. So do follow along with the links there.
I'm going to start the demo off just showing some things off on the Arbitrum network, just because there's features that are live on here that haven't made their way over to Mantle yet. And most notably is the DeFi functionality or DeFi native rights stuff that we mentioned. So when you're on our site, we do work a bit differently than other lending platforms, in that you first deposit into the site and then you get what we call a Dolomite balance, as you can see over here. And your Dolomite balance is able to be used across our different services then. Very similar to like a centralized exchange funding account. So with your Dolomite balance, you can open up as many borrower positions as you want. You can trade. You'll be able to do stuff with the strategies page once that's live. And do things with our rewards page too on Arbitrum in particular. So most notably, you might notice with a few of these assets that has special rows here with buttons attached to them. And so with each of these, you're able to continue to play around with the DeFi functionality that comes along natively with it. And so in the case of GLP, you're able to claim and compound rewards, participate in investing, stake, as well as execute full account transfers into Dolomite. And when you claim and compound your rewards, it's the same user experience that you're used to if you're ever on the GMX native site. And so what's really interesting with this feature as well is at the top here, you're able to see the total amount of GLP I have in my vault, which is a little over 1,000 units. And those 1,000 units represent how much I have across the entirety of Dolomite. So even though my Dolomite balance is 64, I have 1,000 in total spread across my Dolomite balance as well as my borrow positions. When I claim and compound rewards, it's doing it across the entirety of my balance across the entire site, which includes any leverage you have built up or any loops that you might have built up with it, any hedges, etc. So there's really, really flexible functionality here, and that you just claim once for the.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's worth noting that applies to basically everything. Any kind of benefit that you'd get from an asset on Dolomite, it doesn't matter if it's just sitting there in your Dolomite balance, if you're using it as collateral, if you're using it for a margin position, if you're using it for any of the features, as long as it's on Dolomite, it is getting all the benefits. That applies to the minerals we were talking about before. It applies to any kind of rewards programs, both on Dolomite and off it, and also for managing these assets, like what Gory is going to show right here with delegating votes votes or the claiming rewards, vesting, staking. You could do that even while you're borrowing against those assets.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an important consideration then for any asset that you think is important, the DeFi functionality that comes along with it. Being able to maintain those features are really important to us as builders, and so we wanted to make sure we could pass those along to users then. And so how this might look then on the borrow page then is you'll see that there might be a few positions that are open that involve some of these DeFi native assets. A good example here is VR, which is our vote enabled ARB token. So these vote enabled tokens are kept in a smart vault that you own and you yourself own. And the beautiful thing with this is that they can't be borrowed, they can't be taken, they can't be flash borrowed or anything like that. So you don't ever have to worry about someone potentially taking control over your assets in order to use them for voting. So it's also just a good defensive strategy if you own assets that you want to vote with. You also want to make sure no one else is taking those votes. You can control them outright. And because the VARB token is a separate asset from the regular ARB token, it means that you could borrow ARB and zap it into VARB in order to maximize your vote-enabled exposure. This opens up really interesting financial strategies and even political strategies of leverage voting, delta neutral voting, or just being able to unlock equity in your vote-enabled stack. And to show off one of Dolomite's most noteworthy features, our zap feature, what you're able to do is in one click, loop, hedge, swap assets, swap debt, however you see fit in order to manage any one of these positions. And so this really showcases the extent at which Dolomite can be considered an open sandbox for users to play around with. So in particular with this position, I have $170 worth of ETH. I want to go borrow, let's say $180 worth of USDC. Normally I'd be under collateralized because I would have more debt than I do assets. Because the USDC is immediately being zapped into more ETH, and that ETH is being used to further collateralize the position, my health factor reflects the new ETH being deposited as well. So you can see here, the text I've highlighted gives you a very brief description of what's going on. You'll see at the bottom here which DEX aggregator is being used in order to swap it, as well as what the price is. If you want to change the swap impact or the price impact, you can do so above here where the slippage tolerance settings are. So right now I have it set to 0.25%. And this is a really, really nice feature for being able to really utilize our platform to its fullest extent. And the way that we built out the Zap feature is that it uses a DEX meta aggregator under the hood. So the more DEX aggregators we have built into the system, the better the Zap will potentially be because we're able to protect the route against as many swap paths as possible. And so the Zap feature works for really diverse assets. I'm giving a very simple one here, of course, with ETH and USDC. But if I switch over to the Mantle network on this wallet, you'll be able to see the same feature exist for Mantle assets we have listed as well. Oh, just give Rabbi a second. Rabbi's a little slow when it comes to changing networks for some reason, but you'll be able to see this in a second then. Adam, is there anything you wanted to go over while this is loading?
Nothing quite yet. I think we'll get into some questions right afterwards, but so far you've basically hitting all the points. Zap is maybe one other thing to mention with Zap is you could basically use it at any stage of the process with borrow positions. So if you're adding collateral, maybe in your Dolomite balance you're just holding USDC, but you want some ETH collateral, you could do that in one step. You add the collateral and it swaps while you're adding it into ETH. Same thing for repaying debt. You could repay using your collateral. It takes the collateral, swaps it, repays the debt. Same thing for, if you wanted to swap your collateral within a position. Maybe you've got some ETH collateral, but you want to swap it over to, MNT or something. You could do that without having to repay your debt. Just swap it directly. Same thing for swapping your debt around. Maybe it's getting too expensive to borrow USDT. You want to swap it over to USDC. You could do that in one transaction. It's very versatile. Basically, plugs into any step of the borrow process to try and give you as much control and power as possible.
Yeah. So as an example right here, if wanted, I can borrow 10 USDE and zap it right into PT USDE in the same position very easily. And this will modify the composition of the position, and now I'm earning even more on my assets because USDE is being borrowed at 10.7%. and PTUSD, which expires tomorrow, is at 55.38% APR. So one other thing you might notice is that all the interest rates on our site are being displayed in terms of APR, which we think gives a good representation of yields without including any compounding. But if you want to show them in terms of APY, which gives you a more unified view, because that's what other lending markets tend to show, you can click this button here and it'll change all the rates on the site to be reflected in terms of APY then.
Maybe also
So
show
you can
off
see
the share feature there as well if you want to see the looping APR/APY.
So another great feature that Dolomite has as well is if you want to go brag about your position to someone, or maybe you're a threader on Twitter and like to share alpha with your followers, you're able to, with this share feature right here, generate a card that shows off the composition of your position, and as well as any rewards that you're earning with it and the interest rates. So if you want to show the interest in terms of APR, APY, want to show the interest itself relative to the equity you have in the position, or in terms of net value, you can do that as well. You can show it in terms of full amounts. If you want to show ratios instead, you can show ratios so that people can just better understand how to replicate the position.
And also
And the
maybe
ratios,
just the exact dollar values you have. Maybe you don't want to show off how big your bags are.
yeah, exactly. There's a lot of different considerations there with it. And as well as just little cute things like change the background, potentially you can do that as well. So once you're happy with the result, you can generate the image, and you can then copy it to your clipboard or save it to your computer or your phone, and then share it to your heart's content. So you might notice as well that the Zap feature exists on plenty parts of the site. Adam mentioned this before, but on any part, whether you are adding collateral, removing collateral, swapping assets within the position, repaying, or swapping your debt around, is a Zap feature for it. So you're able to zap with whichever category makes the most sense for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And so this allows you to potentially tap into different assets really easily. One of the ways that we helped the Pendle team out on Arbitrum when things were earlier on for them and they didn't have quite the same market size and notoriety that they have today was users were able to swap into the PT assets without going through Pendle's UI, which involved several steps in order to generate a PT asset for themselves. So it was nice in that people could get access to their assets without any need to even go to the Pendle site. And so what we see happening over time is as we list more assets that potentially have really strong yields or a good narrative behind them, people can discover them pretty easily just by visiting our balances page and sorting by different categories, like, for example, the interest rate. And maybe they want to learn more about it, in which case you can click on the documentation link right here, and hopefully the link works. I know we had an issue before with some of these. Nope, it doesn't.
Yeah,
I'll have to fix that up.
Update a couple of them.
But some of the documentation links, if they do work, you'll be able to see more information about them on our docs page, which will share more information about them as well as point you to the relevant parts of their site.
Yeah, at this stage, I basically don't have to withdraw at all from Dolomite. There was a point where looping meant taking something off of Dolomite and going to find the right page on the protocol to mint or redeem or whatever it may be. But plugged into the DEX aggregators that we have, it's basically always the best price available and least hassle possible.
So another feature I wanted to just take a couple minutes just to show off is our minerals feature, which accrues similar to points programs you've probably seen from other services. Most notably, there's of course Powder that's running right now. We do have a leaderboard here where you can sort through all the different participants in the minerals initiative, which is aggregated across the different networks. You'll notice that number 69 has some special flair to it, of course, because it's a very special number. But kidding aside, one of the most notable things with our minerals feature is that minerals exist as a real token on chain. So in order to actually accrue the minerals and be recognized for it, you do need to do the collection process, which I'll actually do right now. And when I do so, it'll claim the minerals that I've acquired on Mantle, send them to my wallet, and then the leaderboard will reflect it a couple minutes later. So one of the ways that we look at Dolomite most importantly is active engagement. So instead of just depositing tokens and passively keeping them on there, in order to recognize the minerals participants, you do need to actively claim them. You can see the different rates at which different assets accrue minerals as well. And so despite the US dollar value of some of these assets fluctuating, we do offer a fixed amount of minerals per asset, which can change in the future in case prices also change significantly. Last thing I'll do is just show off our stats page here. If you're curious to learn more about some of the assets we have, the different TPL that's been accrued for each one, for the interest rates, you're able to do so on here. The stats are partitioned by what different network you have selected. So right now, of course, we're on Mantle. If you wanted to see stats for our other networks, you can click on them and then be taken to see those as well. If you want to see more specific information relating to each one, like the interest rate model that's being used or the amount of assets that are available to be borrowed, you can see over here the amount of assets that are available to be borrowed, liquidation penalty, liquidation threshold, interest rate model that's being used, as well as just different TPL metrics over time. You scroll down to the bottom, you can see the different trades that have been occurring in real time, transfers for people that have been depositing in and out, any liquidations, which luckily ETH depositors have been very responsible and none have been liquidated so far. So we'd like to keep it that way, of course. And yeah, that's all the basic metrics and things that you could see.
Great. I think we're ready to dive into some questions then, Corey. Or you have anything else you wanted to cover?
I think we're ready to take some questions.
Awesome.
Cool. Is there some specific process you wanted to follow for the questions here? I know you've been tagging some of them.
No, not necessarily. I mean, it sounds like you've collected some that you wanted to address, so I want to make sure that you guys cover the things that are most important to you. So if you have some that are top of mind that you'd like to cover, feel free to start with those.
Yeah, sure. I was just grabbing some screenshots as they came in. We could start with a nice easy one, which was, how did you get the name Dolomite? Is one we've gotten before as a question. That one I'd just love to tell you had some real special meaning, but it was actually a very tactical choice. Basically, at the time, roll the clock back, this is 2018, 2017, and at the time, every exchange was just some combination. It was named at like Coin X, Dex, just coin, Bitcoin exchange, some combination, some mashup of those words. And we wanted something different. We wanted something where we could actually have just a word in the same way, Amazon or Apple or has a word. So literally just opened up the dictionary, went word by word until we could find one that we liked the sound of, that we could have the domain, the Twitter handle, the subreddit, the everything for it. And Dolomite's a nice rock solid name, and it's only grown on us more and more over the years.
Yeah, the Dolomites. I've always wanted to visit the Dolomites, so there's like a special for me when I see Dolomites. It's an inspiring place, and it has a special place in my heart personally.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be able to visit last year, and just absolutely stunning, very very beautiful over there.
Yeah,
couldn't have chosen a better namesake.
For sure.
So yeah, we got another one here. Oh, sorry, Corey, you have something else?
No. Just agreeing with you about the name.
Yeah, we've
got potato juice on here. Did you want to ask the question?
Yeah. So I'm sorry if this is long. So probably Brian knows why I'm asking long questions, because I'm cooking something now and then. So yeah. So I have a few questions. So first thing is considering that you're integrating margin trading soon, along with yield farming and lending, how do you, in terms of your smart contract architecture, how do you plan to enhance capital efficiency and user experience compared to other traditional DeFi platforms?
Great question. So first and foremost, any of these new features that are rolling out, like strategies that Adam mentioned, or the trade page, and in particular the trade feature you're talking about, they're all built on the same core smart contracts themselves. And so similar to platforms like Contango, where they source the loops or the leverage from money markets, it'll work the same way that it's built into Dolomite. And so the unique value proposition we have to offer is the leverage that Dolomite offers to users is done strictly through our money market system. And this enables some really interesting things. First and foremost are relatively stable interest rates. So the cost to enter a position tends to be a bit higher than things like perp platforms or perpetual platforms. because you're trading real spot assets. But the flip side of that is if you're looking to open up a long-term position, but of course, if you're doing so responsibly, most likely with very low leverage, that cost really adds up a lot over time on other platforms and venues that trade perps. Even on some of the newer incumbents that like to incentivize trading fees and whatnot, they still can get really expensive as the market gets hot. And so we already saw this back in March. If you wanted to hold an ETH long position open, for example, you're paying over 50% APR on the notional value of your position. Whereas on a platform like Dolomite, if you open a position up, you're only paying interest on the USDC that you borrow, which also was much lower than 50%, of course. And you're also not paying it on the entirety notional of your position. As a matter of fact, you're also earning interest on the ETH you have deposited from people that are borrowing it at the same time. So these sorts of factors play into the like what approach you might want to take with which platform you're looking to utilize. The trade page could also be seen as a simplified version of our borrow page. The ability to leverage up if you wanted to could already be done on our borrow page using our Zap feature in one click. The issue is that if you're not the most advanced DeFi user and don't feel comfortable in more of this like open sandbox environment, it can be a bit tough to navigate it. So the trade page can be seen as a more structured and simplified view of our borrow page to offer those features then. And this will just make it a bit more approachable for people, I think. And I think like overall, the ease of use factor is something that shouldn't be overlooked in terms of being able to like cater to more users and ultimately like drive a better user experience for them to stick with the platform and use it as part of their toolkit. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. And like, yeah, that's pretty cool because let's say like one of your competitors, like in terms of considering perps, would be IntentX. I haven't been using it because I'm a noob at perp. So considering that you have in mind users who don't have like huge experiences, that's good. Yeah. So the last two questions is that is the Zap feature similar? I'm not sure if you have used Init. Is it like the Init's hook feature? Like, is it similar? Because I'm not familiar with Zap. Is it something similar to that, wherein like you provide, let's say I provide like METH as collateral, and I leverage it like 4 times or like 5 times, and then it does the auto borrow and loops it. Is it similar to that?
Yeah, it's similar to that. We like to look at it as a very broad tool that can be used for any asset. Whereas it seems like init creates hooks for specific use cases or assets. Our Zap feature can be seen as hooks, but for a lot more use cases than just that. So if on init right now, people are borrowing ETH and swapping it into METH using a specialized hook. You can do that with our Zap feature as well, with ETH to METH on our borrow page, all in one click, just the same way. You want to repay parts of it or by paying it down with your collateral. If you want to just deposit ETH to pay off your debt that way, there's a lot of flexibility with how you can choose to manage the position. And the nice thing is that you don't need to wait for the Dolomite team to create more hooks like you do with the init team, just to draw the comparison. The Zap feature works naturally and natively with any asset we have on here. So if you identify a strategy where, for example, you might want to borrow ETH and zap it into more MNT because you want to earn minerals and potentially stake it as well once the staking feature goes live on Dolomite to earn powder and any other rewards you get for being in the Mantle reward station, you can do so. And if you don't want to borrow ETH and you want to borrow USDC instead, all of those sorts of possibilities open up to you then. And like I said, the key takeaway is you don't need to wait for the init team to create different hooks for all this because the Zap feature just works for all this stuff out of the box. And just want to be clear, this is not a...
I was gonna say it's like fully flexible hooks without any restrictions on which assets you could use and any amounts, just any of the assets on Dolomite.
And this is a knock against the init team or the hook feature they have designed. It's clearly very useful, and we're happy to see other competitors build innovative things in the lending space. We think it's very underserved. We just wanted to draw the comparison between the feature as we see it versus potentially what they offer.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll be using the Zap feature, because I mean, at least like I'm not like fading on in it, but then when I use the hook feature, it's just for powder. I don't have any utility per se, as in terms of it's just my math is locked there, right? So yeah, the final question is, let's say, compare taking into comparison like lending platforms like Lendl, wherein for the underlying asset we are provided a token that represents the asset. Like for example, LVUSDT or LVMNT. Uh, will you be having utilities for those, like the tokens that represent the underlying asset? Like, for example, I think was it on I'm not sure, was it on Polygon, probably with the, I forgot what it was called. I've been lending there, but yeah, I forgot what it was called, but wherein they had a utility for the token that represents the underlying asset. Will you be having that in the future, or like do you have it already? Like that's my last final question. I'm sorry for the long ones.
No, these are great questions. So by default, one of the things that sets Dolomite apart from lending markets is that you don't have a receipt token that's spit out for you when you deposit into our platform. So when you deposit USDC, you don't get a DUSDC token by default. And this can be seen as both a good thing and a bad thing. Now, the good thing is that some people that are very cautious when it comes to tax purposes don't want to deposit assets into a lending protocol where it looks like they're selling their ETH for a ETH in the case of Aave, or C ETH in the case of Compound. We've seen a lot of use actually come from users that are very conservative this way, where they want it to be very, very clear that they're not swapping their assets around. This, of course, is a drawback because that means that the tokens that you deposit in, you don't get a receipt token for it. So it can be tougher to see the assets in your wallet. If you work with DBank or other popular DeFi app providers like them, you're still able to see your assets in Dolomite. But what we actually did for our Pendle integration is we did create a DUSDC receipt token that works as a means to wrap around your Dolomite balance to still compose it in DeFi. So the DUSDC token doesn't get emitted per se when you deposit into our platform, but if you choose to compose any of your assets in the rest of DeFi, external integrations like Pendle could use those receipt tokens as they want to in order to get access to your balance and use our system the same way that they might want to use Aave or other lending platforms. So it's a bit of a weird answer because the receipt tokens aren't built into the platform at our core level, but we do have receipt tokens available for those that might want to use them.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, maybe probably because I've been using traditional lending platforms where the receipt tokens have a utility. So yeah, maybe okay, a bit confused, but I'll be definitely checking you guys out because I need that Zap feature for the powder. So yeah, thank you so much for answering my questions. So I'll just hop off the stage. So yeah,
My pleasure. Thank you for asking them.
yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Potato.
Cool.
I know we're coming up at time, and I know you guys have some Galaxy campaigns that you have launched recently. Did you guys want to touch on those before we hit the? Actually, it looks like we just passed the time. Do you guys want to touch on those?
Yeah, just to touch on real quick, it's nothing too much extra from what I had mentioned earlier when we were going through the deck. Basically, that right now it looks like Galaxy's back up and working. So shortly after this, we'll share a link to be able to go claim some XP for attending the space. Remember, the passcode for that will be Cook, COOK. But you could just follow us on Twitter or join our Discord to see when we share the link. But yeah, also very soon we'll have a couple of new campaigns using things like METH on Mantle to earn you some extra XP as well, and that's all managed through Galaxy. The way the whole system works is just through Galaxy Oats. Each one represents your XP for that event or that task or achievement. They could be worth anywhere from 10 XP up to 50 XP for really big ones. Yeah, and we're going to be steadily putting out more of them by coming to more events and using some new things that we list on Mantle. You'll be able to start racking up some XP. Actually, I guess on that topic too, if you wanted to touch on it, Corey, I know we saw a question as well about things that are coming in soon, new asset listings. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, so the main assets we're looking at on Mantle would be a new expiry for the PTUSDE asset from Pendle, being able to stake your MNT tokens in the reward station, which will be displayed on our site as SMNT, or short for staked MNT, of course. Because that's a different asset, you can borrow the MNT tokens and zap them into more staked MNT if you want. So you can be paid as a lender to lend your MNT tokens to users that want to stake in the reward station. So some interesting things that will come up there. And then beyond that, we're hoping to do more with FBTC, which is a newly launched Bitcoin initiative on Mantle for those that are not aware. And we think it's an exciting new prospect with more yield opportunities that will open up as we integrate it into Dolomite. So those are the few that we're looking at over the short term. Over the medium to long term, we see plenty of builders and exciting projects coming online. So we'll be evaluating them, and hopefully will be more opportunities for us to list more assets on here in the future.
Amazing. I just posted the links there for everybody in case you want to claim those quests and find those links to Galaxy when they're announced. Do go follow Dolomite on Twitter. Also join their Discord, Telegram, and of course check out their features, including Zap, which we just demoed here at the end. And if anybody's wondering about the quest and password for the NFT for joining this event, that password is Zap. It's ZAP. And I also shared that link above. I'll drop that again one more time before we close out here. Adam and Corey, I just wanted to hand it over to you just one more time in case there was anything else you wanted to mention before we close out.
Just wanted to say how excited we are to be a part of the Mantle community and growing alongside you guys. I think there's a lot of really interesting things that are being worked on, from a DApp and project level to things like the Mantle ecosystem is working on as a whole with the Cook initiative. And it's really indicative of, plenty of DeFi natives and exciting community members that are taking the reins on this stuff. The overall sentiment just reminds me of the early days on Arbitrum, before there was any tribalism or anything like that, when people just wanted to go ahead and build cool stuff and find interesting ways to work with each other. And that ultimately, of course, led to Arbitrum's success as a layer 2 overall. So, if you want to call this a prediction, call it a prediction. But, I think that the Mantle ecosystem is going to continue to see steady growth and maintained excitement from all these different initiatives, because it's really just the culmination of all these people that make it something exciting in the first place.
Couldn't have said it better
Yeah,
myself.
and I'd echo
Yeah.
everything Corey said there. And definitely thanks for having us on. It was great to be able to really go deep into Dolomite. Not often we could go, with such a deep dive into things. And there's really just a lot to talk about with Dolomite, a lot of features, and there's only going to be more as time goes on.
Awesome. And with that, I think we'll just close out. And again, encourage everybody to go check out the app. Go check out Dolomite. Go check out all the features. And join their channels if you have any questions. We'll do our best to help you out here, especially if any of the folks here are, really deep in the weeds with using Dolomite or in the community. Please do feel free to share strategies, share your content about Dolomite here in the channels. I'm just going to post a handful of links for anybody who's curious about what's going on at Mantle more generally. You can find this also listed in the GMeth channel here. We're just going to update this regularly because we realize a lot of people join our GM channel every day, so you can follow updates on what's going on there. But just in case you're curious about what's happening, what's in the works, there's a handful of links there. There's a ton going on this month and into next month. So super exciting summer. And once again, thank you so much to Adam, Corey, and the entire community. It's so good to see folks joining us week after week here, even when we take some time off from deep dives. And we will see you next week for Mantle's Town Hall, where we'll have Puff joining us as well. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys. See you guys in the chat then.
See ya.